Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Thompson. Welcome to the Fruition Blazent Insights on Effective Service-Aware Asset Management webinar. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So who do we have here today? We've got Matt Moore, who's the Shared Services Process Director at Fruition Partners. He's got a great deal of experience in service management, ITAM, versatile leader, process consultant, but he's a horrible golfer. We also have Michael Ludwig, who's the Chief Product Architect at Blazent. Michael's got a tremendous amount of experience in IT, service management, data science for various organizations. And myself, I'm the Director of Marketing here at Blazent. I've got a background in service management, ITIL process, with multiple ITSM vendors. Thank you so much for coming today. During our presentation today, we're going to have a couple of polling questions so we can obtain just a little bit more information about all you customers that have joined today. We definitely appreciate you joining. Very, very quick, we want to see where you are. Going to queue you up. Polling questions only take about a minute, so it's not a lot of time, but it helps us understand, as the attendees of this webinar, some of the insights that we can gather from you, as well as you to understand where you're going to fit with the other customers in your domain. So please look out for that. Let me kick it over to Matt so he can give you some insights on, on Fruition.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. And good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. And thank you very much for the time. So the first place we'll start is Fruition Partners. And based on this infographic, I'll just do a quick summary. We as Fruition Partners, we've been around for about 10 years, or celebrating 10 years. And we started off as a process consulting house. And we did actually see a huge amount of growth when we aligned with ServiceNow, and today we actually hold a master solutions agreement with them, or achieved it, if you will. And this is based on our experience with pretty much a couple different things. One is our services experience is really coming forward and engaging with our customers with hundreds of successful projects, and also achieving a survey score at the end of these projects to make sure that we're doing our job correctly and the customer is satisfied with the engagement. These projects actually involve, ITSM, ITAM, case HR, PPM, and others. Additionally, which also I want to stress upon, is the fact that we also have a development house that we've actually developed about 18 ESM solutions, or enterprise service management solutions, which ITAM SMA, which will be a focus for us today, is one of those accelerators. And additionally, we also have a managed services organization that actually, as of today, has over 285 customers that we manage day in, day out for their ServiceNow deployments. So with that, that's a quick summary of us, and back to you, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Definitely appreciate it. So from the Blazent side, we've got years of experience in IT data intelligence. That's really our forte. We've got many, many patents in that, that side of the space. Recently, over the last couple of years, we've made a dramatic shift and extended our product lines specifically into IT service management, taking all of those years of experience of data quality, data accuracy, data management, IT intelligence, and applying it to service management platforms. Basically, our tools go ahead and help you do reconciliation, consolidation of many different data sources. We've got tremendous experience with large Fortune 500 customers that you see listed below. And working with our customers, we've achieved great impact in time to deployment of the CMDB in less than 60 days. Obviously, by having that CMDB in place, having it accurate, up-to-date, and trusted, you can increase that user adoption, the overall value of their CMDB. And our customers really like it. Examples, they were struggling with not even be able to handle maybe 2 or 3 data sources, and with Blazent in the fold, they've been able to expand the data sources coverage that they're using to over 20. And this is not only their in-house data sources, but also those data sources that may come from their outsourcers, which are a critical part of the infrastructure. By having all that data accessible, you really expand and understand the overall estate of your IT environment. And with that, our customers have experienced improved or their change planning, reduction in the amount of failed changes. Auditing and compliance is huge. You need to, if you're going to pass an audit, you need to understand what you have in your infrastructure, and if you don't have accurate and up-to-date data, you're never going to pass an audit. And obviously, why did you buy service management? Because you want to deliver business services that your customers need, and you want to do that fast as well as to reduce the costs. So that's some of the great impacts customers have seen by deploying the Blazent solutions in service management. Real quick agenda. We're going to run through a lot of great topics today. We want to talk about the white paper. We'll pass it over to the Fruition team to talk about a lot of their customer experience regarding the ITAM side and some of their case studies. We'll move back to the Blazent side to talk a lot about how our SACM solution as well as our seem-to-be accuracy solution can help you link and tie ITAM to ITSM, and then we'll have our Q&A. So earlier this year, Blazent and Fruition were platinum sponsors of a great paper written by Dennis Drock, that's lead VP analyst at EMA, as they were looking for that huge intersection of what we're calling service-aware asset management. And we were platinum sponsors. He interviewed a lot of customers, did a lot of surveys, and that was the emphasis for this webinar today, to take some of that data, to use our customer experiences to expound upon all that great research. So as he's working with, what are the key areas that we're looking at? You know, the spotlight really is on IT. IT has not really ever been stable, especially these days with the consumerization of IT. There's a huge amount of pressure to support and drive business value. IT cannot be a cost center. I was reading a recent survey from another analyst company. They're saying that business intelligence and analytics, infrastructure and consumeration and mobile devices is really what the CIOs are focusing on and what they're spending it on. Because customers want more, i.e. the customers, the end users in your community as a CIO, they want more, they want it faster, obviously cost, and they want it real-time access to that area. So they're calling it consumeration of IT, and also IT does not want to get outsourced. It's very, very easy these days for, if you as an IT provider are not meeting the requirements of your customers, for them to outsource you, to use other partners, to go to Amazon to get what they need. That's what we're referring to many times as rogue IT. So as part of the emphasis for the paper, what we were looking at and what Dennis was finding is we're talking about that evolution of ITAM, traditional, as well as ITSM, as the evolution of these two disciplines really intersecting and coming together. ITAM around the life cycle and the cost, as well as ITSM around providing the services, and that still has a life cycle for your IT service your IT service management organization. Companies are realizing that they need to have those two interlinked to really get the value out of their overall service management platform, as well as to get the functions and the needs met for your ITAM solutions and needs. Well, here's the good news. One of the key findings of Dennis's paper was SACM, as we're describing it, is that companies are actually maturing their processes, so it's on the uptick. They are understanding that in order to deliver the value of the services, which is you've bought that asset for a specific reason and there's a purpose behind it, it's to help you deliver a better service to your users that are using it. There's interdependencies, there's relationships, there's the cost, there's a life cycle. They're realizing that that needs to link together, and they're understanding that they need to mature those processes. So it is on the uptake, but we know it's not easy based on a lot of the research that Dennis found in his paper. With that said, around the overview of the paper, some of the key findings, I'm going to pass it over to Matt Moore, and Matt's going to talk a lot about some of the information and what Fruition has done, how they've worked with their different customers and constituents, and some of the value that they're providing to their users.
Great, thanks, Mark. And let me get set up here really quick. So, really quick, and let's get the slideshow going. All right, there we go. Slideshow and current slide. All right, so as we move into our section, the first place that we'll start is really going to be the revolt section, or really what's going on. So in regard to the survey that Mark identified, the EMA survey, it is great news that companies are adopting the SACM strategy of really aligning services to their major processes within ITSM, and then also supporting it with ITAM. But you know, the sins of the past are difficult to get rid of, if you will. And so really starting from the left, the first thing that we're looking at is there is still the element of rogue IT and data silos that still exists. So while companies still will go through the process, and there's well over half of the people surveyed did identify that they have some sort of CMDB in place, they're still struggling with these silos and these various sources of a CMDB. So in essence, even though they may have a single database that is a CMDB, they're still struggling with separate data sources, separate spreadsheets, separate databases, and also working with multiple discovery tools, which we'll cover here in a little bit. Additionally, as we talk about the survey also uncovered that about 40% to 63% of the workforce is burning their time dealing with accuracy issues that come out of CMDB. So whether it's incident management that are being spawned based on incorrect change in release cycles that occur, things are being taken on or off of the infrastructure incorrectly, as well as also planning for changes, because in essence, IT departments can struggle with saying, is our CMDB accurate? Are these relationships accurate? Are they tied to the right services? Are the right assets to assets tied together? And they have to go through the process of confirming it instead of trusting in the data. In regards to pulling data in from the infrastructure, discovery tools is really, really key here. So of the survey, about 70% identified the fact that they have at least one or more discovery tools in their infrastructure. And the funny thing was, beyond that, 36% said they had over two. But then we actually found out, or the survey found out, that some were even struggling with 20 to 40 discovery tools, which obviously large organizations, but in terms of bringing it all together and coordinating concepts such as what is truly unique, what is your naming standards for CIs, those types of aspects, it is somewhat of a nightmare. And then the final thing, which I thought was a little bit, which I found funny myself, was for software license management, the survey identified that all organizations surveyed, about 73% said they had software licensing in place, but of that, 61% indicated that they weren't happy with it. They're actually going out and budgeting for more software management solutions, and they're also struggling with the licensing aspects as well. So one thing I want to do is I'm going to take a quick pause, and I'm going to turn over to Mike Henderson from Fruition, and we're going to put our first poll question out regarding discovery tools.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yep, so we're going to launch our first poll, first of two today. And the first poll question asks, how many different data sources is your organization currently using to populate its CMDB? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that right now. Everybody should see a pop-up on their screen with that poll question on it, so hopefully you can go ahead and vote.
Is there any Jeopardy music with this?
No Jeopardy music.
Okay, just checking.
So we'll give everybody about 10 more seconds here to vote. Still have some votes coming in, so appreciate everybody participating. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, poll closed, and here are the results. So again, the poll question was, how many different data sources is your organization currently using to populate its CMDB? 42% said 1 to 3, 31% said 4 to 7, 8% said 8 to 15, 0% said 15 plus, and then 19% said, I don't know.
All right.
Great. So just worth noting that 72% of attendees voted, so making these results pretty significant. So thanks to the folks who voted. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the results and pass it back to Matt.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks for participating in the poll. All right. Next topic. So moving on to the next piece is really the new order, if you will. So, as we all know, back in like 2007, ITIL v3 came out and really, reinforced the idea that, organizations to be successful within servicing their customer need to really adopt a service-focused solution in regards to managing their IT infrastructure. So everyone really started moving toward ITSM, and so we saw a maturing of all the common modules such as incident change, problem, and also the alignment to a service catalog. But the other aspect is the key to that was the CMDB that was somewhat accurate. And really, for the drive of the CMDB, one of the things that customers are now really glomming to now, lack of a better term, is really ITAM, where they do really identify the fact that even though they've matured their ITSM piece of it, they're realizing that with the more efficient ITSM piece, they're seeing they can be more efficient if they are able to apply a better life cycle of their assets. So at least for Fruition's perspective, in the last 2 years, we have seen actually a big uptick in ITAM, where customers really want to control their procurement, their receiving, deployment tracking, and retiring of their assets for many different reasons, specifically for controlling their costs, operational capital expenditures, but also being able to make sure that that the assets align properly to the correct services and they can actually make good decisions. In regards to justifications for the investment and the value, the poll, the EMA poll, really came out if you look at the left-hand side of this slide, came out with really 4 top reasons of why why people want to move forward for the CMDB, and then really just going down the list, pretty logical. One is really identifying the business needs and being able to change and adapt to those business needs, being able to optimize the hardware and software across the asset lifecycle, meaning that do we really need to bring on more equipment, more software? Can we harvest what's already out there? Those type of things. Being able to do lifecycle planning for application services for cost and value. I mentioned this before with capital expenditures and operational expenditures. One note as well is being able to control it under one control point, where decisions financially can be made based on a single group looking at the same data rather than data silos and kind of guessing who needs what, and people may not be sharing, if you will. And then finally, also really looking and trying to find value as to move into the cloud, and making sure that they can get value there. And the main thing is this is all fine and well, and the ultimate goal here is really to service the customer, to provide a stable service, and to make sure the customer has a good experience with the IT infrastructure. But to take one quick look into the tactical side of things, let's look at what the value is to IT. So many on the call are really focused on IT on a day-to-day, and if we look at it from an ITSM perspective, the real value is going to be the accurate CMDB and making sure that the ITAM process controls the intake and the life cycle of the assets, but also we'll touch upon this in a little bit, discovery, making sure that you can audit the infrastructure and making sure you know what's out there. But the real value of an accurate CMDB, beyond the fact that you have a stable service, is really more efficiency, and we'll talk about the ITSM piece first. Really, listing off, doing a quick list of day-to-day benefits is, when IT departments want to do planning for change and releases, they have more accurate information. They can improve their incident and problem resolution times. They actually, IT organizations are reporting that they can actually have better service level and warranties to be delivered. They also can identify the adherence to standards and legal obligations. But the other thing is it's also traceable. Everything that is done can be traceable and traced back to a CI. From an ITAM perspective, we covered the main aspects of it, but the key points are being able to map the asset-to-asset, asset-to-service relationships within the CIs, but also being able to have the accurate inventory, and then also being able to identify the value of that asset to the service and be able to identify costs and financials. So with that being said, one thing I want to touch upon, and as we talk about the joint partnership with Fruition and Blazent, let's take a quick pause on the discovery side. For the discovery side, what we have here is, we are seeing the hallmark of great discovery tools are, one is being able to go into the infrastructure and conduct the audit to confirm what's in the configuration management database and to do a one-to-one confirmation. But also, especially if there's multiple data sources, what have you, or the main things you want to get in continuity is to establish a certain or defined uniqueness within the CI to make sure that the CI that you have is not duplicated or not represented, but make sure you have a unique identifier and also a standard naming convention, cross-referencing a standard library of terms and making sure that that's coming in as well. Very good hallmarks for discovery tools. And what organizations are coming back with, for us, at least for Fruition, is the accuracy of the database is a combination of ITAM processes coupled with a discovery solution or strategy. What I want to do now is kind of taking these survey results and taking these kind of more higher level concepts. And what I want to do is I want to move on to the next slide, and I want to introduce an individual, Andy Whitlatch. Andy Whitlatch is a Fruition Partner employee, but more importantly, he is the practice manager for our ITAM accelerator. And what we are going to do is we're going to walk through, we technically have three case studies today. We're really going to cover two based on time, and we're going to cover really two. One is regarding a deployment of Fruition Partners SMA, ITAM, at a transportation industry, aviation company, as well as we're going to focus in on a national department store that brought us in to help them out with their ITAM deal. So Andy, how you doing today?
Hey Matt, thanks for having me. Welcome. I'm always excited to talk about ITAM and a lot of good things discussed so far. So
I had to drag you in the room right now. So, but the main thing is let's first start talking about the transportation piece. So from that perspective, give us a rundown of kind of where the customer was when we walked in at Fruition, and what did you see and what happened?
Sure, absolutely. So when we first talked to this client, a lot of their challenges were some of those things that Mark and yourself both discussed here in some of the previous slides, is understanding what do they have, where is it at, can they start to get a grasp on managing all the different spreadsheets, all the different discovery tools. They have their asset data across several different technology teams in disparate databases. So it's really hard to get that holistic enterprise picture of what do they own, where is it at, and who's using it. One of the additional challenges for them being in the transportation industry is that it's a highly mobile workforce. So just having discovery tools didn't always do the job. They've got people flying all over the country or across the globe, and they need to be able to track and manage those devices from a asset management perspective, as well as warranty and support perspective.
Cool. All right, so moving on. So in terms of the deployment, let's talk about the value that the customer realized and when. So we started in November 2013 and ended in February 2014. So talk about, just kind of talk about the value that the customer realized through it and, pretty much the end results.
Sure. So with our ITAM SMA accelerator solution, we've really got sort of a pre-baked approach that we like to use, where in talking to a lot of clients across the industries, we see the same pain points time and time again when it comes to consolidating data, when it comes to the integration of, as one of the previous slides showed, the activities or the ITSM support processes that are in place, and incorporating that to the ITAM lifecycle. We see a lot of the pain points time and time again. So when we first kicked off, we really got everybody into the same room, the stakeholders across all the different technology teams, as well as the process owners and tool owners, to walk through that life cycle, cradle to grave, make sure that we're aligned and following the same sort of processes to achieve the same goals in the end. And so doing that, we really had two goals: educational, again, and aligning to those best practices, as well as tactical. So understanding what are the nuts and bolts that we need to address as part of the solution, so that we can have an accurate and reliable seem to be at the end of those 106 days.
And then what's the final values? I know we listed them here, but what was the end result value on this?
Sure. So the end result was again, being able to speak the common language, whether we're talking to the server team, the end user mobile device team, the desktop team, being able to have that single repository where all the different data sources that existed were federated into the single source of truth that was reliable, that could be trusted for planning and forecasting from a budget perspective, as well as being able to, we've kind of been mentioning hardware. On the software side, being able to manage those licenses and contracts, as well as reconcile that with the compliance side with what was actually deployed out in the environment. So again, the huge value is just being able to go to one single reliable source and get that visibility, regardless of where those assets were on the globe.
Okay, thanks. And then what we'll do is we'll touch upon one more case study, and we don't go into much detail. I think you did a good job there, but we'll just touch upon it, and then the third one we'll skip just for sake of time. But the next one we're talking about is really retail. So this is a national retail chain in box stores, lots of different locations around the country. So give us a quick rundown in terms of the challenges. Let's concentrate on the challenges they're facing at this point.
Yeah, again, many of the same things. Disparate data spreadsheets across the different technology teams that may sound familiar to some of the folks on the call, as well as a wide tool set. So managing some of their ITSM processes, things like requests, through outside tools. Google Forms is becoming a common theme that we're seeing, and this happened to be one of those examples where we're seeing some request activities managed through Google Forms. So we were able to, again, align those processes, take that functionality that they were relying on Google for, bring that into ServiceNow to, again, create that single source where we could start to tie together the ITSM processes, integrate that to the asset management and CMDB repositories, and able to get that holistic picture and be able to, again, manage that all out of a single system.
Cool. And then again, you covered the implementation previous, but what was the value that they saw, or what was the feedback as we ended up and as we marched along, months in time after?
Yeah, and it really came down to operational efficiencies. As we were talking to these different teams, they were all in those silos that we kind of talked through in some of the first slides, where they didn't realize they were doing the same activities slightly differently. But repeating a lot of the effort over and over again. So in bringing those teams together and talking through that process across all the teams, we were able to really drive some efficiency into the process to make some common ground and start to manage these assets in a more efficient manner.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. And we'll keep moving forward here, because again, what I want to do is I do want to skip the third one, just for the simple fact that it is the same theme over and over from this perspective. And what you're seeing is, and I do want to put a little bit of disclaimer here on this, is as you're looking at the discovery technology, the partnership is Blazent Fruition. And the technology that we're using for discovery is, as we walked in and worked with these customers, they wanted to leverage, at least initially, their legacy discovery tools. And so what we've done and what Blazent and Fruition have done in the past we have actually engaged with standard ServiceNow ITAM, so not the accelerated versions, in industries such as manufacturing and retail, but additionally industries that really require very disparate organizations, distributed around multiple geographic locations with assets. And what we found here is we're really excited with this partnership to start applying Blazent and its discovery capabilities to our accelerator to have a much more accurate CMDB coupled with a more efficient best practice ITAM approach. So again, a little bit of a plug there, if you will, but I do want to make sure and make it clear that from a discovery tool, from a ServiceNow perspective for Fruition side, we're pretty agnostic in the discovery tools. But with that being said, the Blazent partnership is actually something that we actually are very happy with, and we've seen success in the standard ServiceNow deployments. And again, we are looking forward to the SMA coupling, if you will. So moving on. So the next one use case is healthcare. Again, if you're interested in the healthcare aspect, if you are healthcare, I need to review the customer list or the interest list, if you will. Let us know. We'll be more than happy to go deep dive on that. But you'll get the same theme that we covered from the retail as well as the aviation transportation. So moving on to Fruition's final slide, and let's talk about the final analysis and really just kind of reinforce the accurate data, the CMDB concept, again, supported by ITAM and an accurate CMDB with the discovery tool. So of this survey, from the EMA survey, 62% of those surveys came back and said that they were using CMDB or modeling to establish ownership, services, et cetera. And really, here's what the feedback was, and in terms of what these organizations were benefiting from. So again, I know everyone knows the concept of CMDB and understands the value, but the survey comes back with some pretty cool findings of the likelihood of success or likelihood of telltale of success and customers really being more and more proactive in terms of engaging with the data that they're using with. So to go quickly through this, again, if you want to have a copy of this presentation, we're more than happy to give it to you, but really to start with 4 times more likely, organizations that actually are implementing the CMDB are more likely to have an application store for managing the software requests, and also 4 times more likely to have an ADDM in place or they're planning to put that in place. Additionally, moving on to the 3 times more likely, these organizations are 3 times more likely to have any type of application portfolio planning. That it also includes asset and financial coordination as well, so actually being able to realize cost within the model. Additionally, 3 times more likely to have service catalog in place, as well as supporting green IT initiatives for energy costs and energy efficiency. On the 2-time area, so double, if you will, these organizations really are more likely to have automated asset and inventory. They're also able to leverage their harvesting, the ability to harvest their desktops and other equipment. They're also able to put in a runbook or any type of IT process automation. They're also able to, and one thing that we as Fruition are interested in is really the ability to also expand outside of IT in regards to expanding beyond a traditional ITSM and ITAM. We are finding customers who are really adopting CMDB and having a good handle on the IT side are looking to move outside into HR, portfolio and project management, and even custom areas as well. And then finally, again, from ServiceNow being a cloud company and our partnership with them, we're also very interested in organizations that are moving to the cloud for the service-aware asset management. So with that, there's going to be a final poll question, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike to ask it.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yep, so this is our final poll question for the day. And this ties in nicely with the slide currently up on your screen. So the final poll question asks, how much do you trust your data to make strategic decisions? And the options for response are, I completely trust our data, I partially trust our data, I don't trust our data, and final one is, I don't know. So again, no Jeopardy music, but we'll give everybody 10 seconds here to vote. Still got some votes coming in. Thank you, everybody. So we'll go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, poll closed. Here are the results. So again, the question was, how much do you trust your data to make strategic decisions? 6% said, I completely trust our data. 64% said, I partially trust our data. And then 27% said, I don't trust our data. And then 3% said, I don't know. And we had about 70% of you vote, so pretty significant results. So thank you, everybody. That's our last poll for the day. All right. And actually, at this time, I think we're going to go ahead and push it off to Blazent for their segment. So, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter again.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks a lot for all the great information that you shared. One thing that I had to almost chuckle at is that as they were going through Fruition slides, I mentioned one of the surveys I saw from the CIO report, and how they broke it up was between emerging technologies and core functional, just, I'll say keeping the lights on. And on slide 13, as Fruition was talking about some of the 4 key areas around moving to cloud and applications, moving to cloud or managing cloud and VM in the other survey that I mentioned, it's actually thought of as the status quo right now. Who'd have thought that, 5, 6 years ago when people were scared to move to the cloud? But really today, CIOs are thinking that the cloud and managing and VMs in the cloud, that's just part of doing business. It was the number 5 area that they are spending money on this year, but it's still thought of as just a core functioning technology, which is great to hear. So now I'm going to pass it over to Michael Ludwig. Michael has tremendous experience in data science background. He actually just got back from another customer that he's working with, from the Blazent side. You heard a lot about configuration management and ITAM, and now let's talk about the data quality behind that. because we talked about managing the resources and keeping those two in line, but is it really that easy, Michael? Is it really easy to get your configuration management team and asset management team, not only from a process, but from a technical functional side, from the product, from the service management platform that may be in play? So I'll kick it over to Michael. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Hope everybody's enjoying the webinar. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to crawl down into the weeds with you a little bit and talk about some of the common problems that we see across the customer base when we go to do an initial service management stand-up. And I'm going to start with talking about something that is commonly referred to as the reference structures, and specifically within ServiceNow, there are a couple of areas that need to be touched on, but these really span all service management platforms because they all rely on a centralized reference structure. The common reference tables are shared by many parts of the system, and so when Dennis was talking about the fact in his white paper that service-aware asset management is really becoming the intersection of traditionally what would have been ITSM and asset management practices, that's really true, especially if you look at the way the technology is organized, because these common reference tables that I'm going to talk about are shared across Service Catalog, the CMDB, asset management, and financial portions of service management applications. And so its impact of getting the data right inside of these is extremely important, and it reaches out to all aspects of the system. So some of these common reference tables cover things like locations, cost centers, departments, core companies, vendors that you deal with. And Mark, if you could go to the next slide. It's important to note that product model, which is a new type of table that's being seen in newer service management infrastructure systems, control the common references to not only hardware but software packages themselves. And so again, this reaches out into Service Catalog, the CMDB, and Asset, as they are all sharing these common product models and software package models. And so what we see for people dealing with these is that a lot of times they're populating these core reference tables as part of an initial stand-up of the asset or configuration side of a service management system. And so they're more or less mapping the values that were in their previous system directly into these reference tables. And really that's a mistake, and the reason it's a mistake is because there are a lot of common errors that occur, particularly in legacy systems, that then are carried over into your brand new system. And the thing that I would like to say is these tables should not be initially populated as part of a CI or asset stand-up. These tables should be populated segregately, and they really should be populated as part of a deduped and normalized process. So common examples of the problems if you don't treat this as a normalized data process and a normalized constrained list is in location. You'll see examples like the following. The first one is 1234 West period Grand Boulevard, and the next one is 1234 West Grand Boulevard. Now it's real common when people deal with locations, especially if the information being populated in is coming in from multiple systems, that whoever was doing the data entry on the manual systems that are used to govern these things tend to enter it however they were trained and not necessarily in a standardized methodology. Other examples would be for manufacturers. So you see 4 different representations of what is essentially the same manufacturer, Dell. So we see just Dell, Dell Inc., done in camel case, and then all uppercase Dell and Dell Inc. So it's very common to see representations of manufacturers come in different ways. IBM is really good in the sense that sometimes you see it in abbreviated fashion, sometimes you see it as international business machines, and then sometimes you see particularized divisions within the larger IBM organization. So the biggest problem with not treating these core reference tables as a set of normalized values that are then used and managed as a constrained list is that this will alter the reporting that you do from your service management system downstream. So assets or CIs will be split across two location values that are actually the same location. If we go back to that example we showed earlier, 1234 W period Grand River will be one location, and 1234 West Grand River would be a second location, and whichever assets or CIs are associated to whichever location is going to split your reporting numbers. So for example, if I wanted to know how many particular servers I had housed at that location, the answer to that question is actually going to be the sum of both of those locations. But as an end user, you wouldn't know that, and therefore your reporting would be inaccurate. The same thing holds true for assets or CIs that would be split across the 4 manufacturer values that we showed for Dell. So any reporting that you would do on numbers from the vendor or manufacturer Dell would actually be split across the representations because they weren't normalized and acted and maintained upon as a constrained list before they were pre-populated into the system. And so we see this occur quite often in the number of customers that we've engaged with who really didn't understand how the reference structures functioned and the value that would be received from having it normalized and deduplicated before the reference tables were populated, and then didn't understand the impact that it would have on their downstream reporting if these things were left the way they were initially stood up. Now it gets to be more and more of a problem as you leave these things in place because you start to get associated records from incident and change associated with these CIs, and so any changes that you make to the core tables, the core reference tables, become more and more difficult to implement the longer you live with the original SIN that was committed upon the propagation of the tables when they were instantiated. So Blazent can help in a number of ways in this area. As was mentioned earlier, data management in the IT service management area is really our forte. And so we can take all of your incoming data sources that contain references to these core tables and deduplicate them and normalize them, and then provide a clean list which can then be populated into these core tables via an import set. And then after initial population, the incoming data values can be analyzed by Blazent and associated to the constrained list that you're managing within the table. So if a value comes in that is new to the table, we offer a reporting structure to tell you that this value is coming from an incoming data source, either associated with your core company or perhaps associated with one of your IT outsourcers or a vendor, so that you can either determine whether that value is a new value that should be added to the constrained list, or that value is in fact being reported in error, and then you can go back to the reporting organization and take process correction. So that's a really important value. It really saves a tremendous amount of time in terms of getting your reporting accurate in your downstream processes. The second thing I really want to touch on here is the intersection of asset management and configuration management, in particular 2 areas. The first is the onboarding of asset itself. And so my first bullet note here says, no amount of technology will save you from poor processes or processes that are not followed. And the reason I say that is that in today's modern service management systems, there's really a high degree of synchronization between asset and CI, but the business rules that govern that synchronization are so important, and it's really important to understand how those business rules work in order for you to be successful in managing both asset and configuration simultaneously. So onboarding of an asset is really important, particularly in the ServiceNow environment, because there are no mandatory fields, and if you don't understand how those business rules work between synchronizing the creation of an asset and the corresponding CI that will be created, then it's really, really easy to create duplicates within your system. And if you're lucky, that duplicate will only occur either on the CI side from a newly onboarded asset where the discovery process had no way to tie that CI back to its asset, or if you're unlucky, both in the asset and CI side, because you'll get into a cycle of these business rules firing off because either one side or the other is not being recognized because you didn't enter enough core information in your process. And so that's an area where Fruition Partners can really help you get your processes straight in terms of the onboarding of asset, making sure that the information that you enter is the appropriate information and is enough to ensure that the configuration side will marry up when that configuration item is discovered, and the marriage will connect all the way back through the asset that was originally onboarded. And then the second area is understanding asset lifecycle states and substates and how they're managed. The interaction that that has not only with the CI install status, but also the operational status field for a particular CI item. So it's really important that when you talk about process, that your incident process, your change process plays a role in the management of these lifecycle states, and also that the operational statuses are accounted for because they are not interlinked. In other words, it's not managed by the software in an automated fashion. And so it's important to understand that when you're managing the lifecycle state and substate, that it has a life that exists both on the asset side in the form of the field state and substate, and then on the CI side, either as install status if it's a direct descendant of CMDB CI, or hardware install status if it's a descendant from CMDB CI hardware. And then the operational status field that out of the box doesn't even appear on the incident and change forms, but really should, because that's the field that really speaks to change planning and incident resolution along with those life cycle fields. So those are some things that you really need to watch out for. Blazent has a series of analytics that help you maintain the synchronization between these different life cycle states and the operational statuses so that we can show you where they are in conflict with one another, as well as we have a set of core business rules that can help you try to maintain accuracy between asset and CI during the onboarding process. And then thirdly, we have a process that can help you dedupe if you've dove into this process, didn't really understand the underlying business rules, and got yourself in trouble. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Mark again, and I believe we're going to do some questions.
Yes, thanks so much. That's great information that we're able to share between all those process experts. I mean, really, Dennis hit it on the head, right? In that we're talking about a building block for your overall operational efficiencies improvement in your organizations by linking those two together. We're talking about asset management, service desk. Service desk, he's using the general term of ITSM, of service management. Linking all those two together, that's where you're going to get the value. One thing that I hope that you all noticed is that when we're talking about the CMDB, it's really the core, the linchpin, to have that information available. But even though the CMDB, it needs to be trusted from an incident or understanding when problems occur, if you notice a lot of the conversation and what I'm noticing, and I'll let Matt and Michael maybe do a quick comment on that because they're speaking to a lot of customers, is that if you've got a great CMDB and it's trusted, you can really do the future planning, change planning, to really make strategic impact on your organization. Because it's really about the future when you're looking at the CMDB and how you're improving your organization. It's organizations that can actually do more faster. They're really seeing the huge benefits from having that information available. So do we have questions, Mike, that have come up, since we do have a couple minutes, and I'll cover that as you look for any questions that may have come up. I'll cover that there are some new webinars coming up from both sides, from Fruition as well as Blazent. From the Blazent side, next week, same time, we've got one talking about keys to a successful CMDB with myself and Michael Ludwig. And Fruition, I'll let you guys comment on specific details of the Fruition webinar coming up on November 12th.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, details on the next Fruition webinar, November 12th. We're actually supporting industry affiliate MoveSoft in their webinar entitled How to Reduce Trouble Ticket Volume and Restore Services Faster with ServiceNow and Incident Moog. So just a real brief description of what's going to be covered. MoveSoft will demonstrate how Incident Moog's certified integration with ServiceNow can empower your service desk by reducing trouble ticket volume and providing full visibility into IT operations restoral efforts. So if that sounds like a webinar that might be of interest, you can go to the Fruition Partners website, go to the webinars page, and find more details and register for it there. And as far as questions, looking at the question box now, and it looks like we have a couple that came in today. So I'll go ahead and present those to everybody, meaning both Fruition and Blazent, and you guys can kind of figure out who's best suited to answer. So the first question is, without accelerators, what's the typical deployment time with ServiceNow ITAM? And because it's ITAM related, seems like a question for Fruition here.
Yeah, Mike, I'll take this one. This is Andy. Typically, there's a lot of variables in play depending on, one of our common sayings is don't try to boil the ocean, meaning approach these types of implementations in consumable chunks. That said, the typical traditional rollout for ITAM on ServiceNow, from what we've seen over the past 10 years, really ranges from 6 months for some of the smaller, more focused implementations, all the way up to 12 to 18 months for some of the large-scale enterprise-wide rollouts of typically hardware and software asset management, as well as some contract management in there as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and if anybody out there has a follow-up question, or your question wasn't answered fully, feel free to follow up with us. Our email addresses are up on the screen now. Another question, and it looks like, we have 3 minutes here, so let's present this and see if we have time for one more. But the next question, and this one looks like it's for Blazent. What trends are you seeing in data quality management? Are companies assigning people just for that task?
So this is Michael from Blazent. I'd be happy to take that. the latest trend that we've seen in large-scale enterprise customers is the formation of data quality teams that are acting within the ITSM area. And so the teams are looking at data quality problems that are occurring in both the vendor files that they're dealing with, so data that's coming in from areas where they have outsourced managed clouds or they have ITO outsourcers operating services within their environment, as well as their own tool teams that are reporting data. And then also those folks are dealing with audits as well. And so the data quality team is responsible for the overall quality of the CMDB and asset systems. And then because of that role and because of their understanding of the flow of data, are responsible for responding to audits within their organizations.
Great, thanks, Michael. And we have 2 minutes, so I'll present one more question to our presenters, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. I do want to point out that, though, if you did ask a question today and it wasn't answered, we will follow up with you personally after the webinar. Last question, this might be for both Fruition and Blazent. How do you deal with overlapping data sources?
Yeah, I'll take that, and then Mark or Michael, if you want to chime in. From a process side or an ITAM side, what we typically approach that conversation with is truly identifying what attributes are needed from these systems and what the role of those different systems are in the overall ITAM process. Whether we're talking integration of ERP tools or discovery tools, we want to understand, what is the true value being provided if we do have overlapping data sources from each of those tools, and being able to identify if one is trusted over the other, and if so, how we approach that from there. Mark or Michael, maybe you can speak from the Blazent side as far as some of the capabilities with that.
Sure, that's a scenario we deal with almost every day with our customers, and so really Blazent's key value, or one of the key values that we have, is being an onboarding engine for service management platforms. And so we provide a way to bring in large numbers of data sources, and many times they're overlapping. And then we have a set of front-end UI experiences that are aimed at the user, where they determine through various implementations of algorithms what they consider to be trusted sources for CI core identity values, so name tag, serial number, as well as attributes from an operational standpoint that are important to populating into the CMDB. So it is possible to take some attributes from one of the overlapping sources and other attributes from an overlapping source that isn't necessarily what you used for the primary identifiers. But that's mainly due to our ability to do complex association between CIs and assets that are represented across disparate sources, and then really allowing the end user to determine on not only a CI level but an attribute by attribute basis what they consider to be the most trusted source.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. So we have hit the hour limit, so we'll go ahead and close up here. Last words to everybody. The recording of today's webinar will be shared next week, so be on the lookout for that. When we hope to see everybody in the near future at our next webinar. So thanks to Blazent, thanks for everybody for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.